Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. What this amendment is designed to do is to make sure that if we can come up with a renewable power source that is dispatchable, and that's the magic word. That's the problem with renewable right now. It's not dispatchable. We were talking about what dispatchable means. I don't have a definition for you, but Representative Darby probably said it better than anybody. He said, when you turn the switch, the power comes on. That's what dispatchable really means in very simple terms. We have not had a wind or solar project yet in the state of Texas that would qualify as dispatchable power or dispatchable electricity. But in the next 4 to 5 years, most people believe with the battery technology that's coming online and is being developed, that we will in fact be able to provide the storage of electricity that is produced intermittently so that we'll make that dispatchable. And if we can do that, then why would we discriminate against one power source against another? Why wouldn't we want power from every source possible? And so this would just prevent us from picking winners and losers and in terms of energy production, and it would permit, if that day ever comes, when we can use technology to use renewables. Now, this includes not just wind and solar, but for instance, Representative Clardy in his district has a biomass plant. Now, biomass is very close to being a sustainable and consistent source of power for dispatchable power. We're going to need power from everywhere we can get it on our grid. And so for that reason, I would ask you to approve this amendment.
Mr. Patterson, for what purpose?
Will the gentleman yield for questions?
Will the gentleman yield for questions? The gentleman will yield.
Mr. Smithee, the biomass plant that you talked about over in East Texas, that is, I believe, owned by Austin Energy. Is that correct?
I really don't know. I just had the conversation with Mr. Clardy, and he's concerned that under the terms of the bill, plants like that might open in other parts of the state. And I have some of those in my district that use cow manure, honestly, and other forms of waste to produce energy.
Are you aware that biomass plant in East Texas provided 0 megawatts during the Winter Storm Uri event?
I don't know anything about it, but I know that we had a number of thermal plants and other sources that provided 0 energy during that period of time. We had failures among virtually all of our sources of electricity, of generation that we have out there.
Actually, most of the generation was natural gas fired during Winter Storm Uri. Are you aware that more than 60% of the megawatts that are in the queue for ERCOT already are intermittent resources, wind and solar, predominantly solar? So are you saying that we need to add more incentives for wind and solar for them to build in ERCOT?
Well, I'm saying this, that the problem with wind and solar so far has been the intermittency. That although it has given us a power source, it has not been what we would consider or define as a dispatchable source. And I get that. We don't need any more power unless it's going to be available when we need it. And so all this amendment says, and basically, let me tell you where we are on the bill right now. A wind or solar project or any renewable project could fit into the definition of an eligible project, okay? But there's a question as to whether it would fit into the definition of an eligible property. And so, in a way, this amendment just clarifies this. Now, it's a policy decision this legislature is going to have to make. Do you want to pick a winner and a loser here? Or do we want to say whatever source of power we can get it from that will be sustainable and will also be dispatchable and dependable? We want that for our grid because we're going to need that. And
isn't it true that the federal government's already picking winners and losers when it comes to our energy resources? I mean, subsidies for natural gas are 39 cents for every $20 that wind power receives and $80 that solar receives. So the federal government's already picking winners and losers, and this bill would help alleviate that by providing some incentives for dispatchable generation resources and not wind and solar. Is that not true?
Well, I'm not sure our job is to level the playing field. What I want to do is to encourage the production of energy, because the more energy capacity we can get online, the better it is for Texas consumers. It ensures reliability, and it also helps cut the cost of the electricity to the ultimate consumer. And those renewable sources that we have out there now, primarily the wind, it has reduced the cost of electricity to the end user throughout the state of Texas, and that's a good thing.
I disagree. I mean, wind power breaks even at negative 2.5 cents per kilowatt hour. Is that true?
No. Wind, I don't know if I understand your question, but I'm just telling you the cost per kilowatt hour is significantly less for renewables than it is for thermal.
But it depressed the market to such a degree that no one else would invest in our market, and therefore that's why no more dispatchable, no more thermal generation's been built in half a decade, basically, because they depressed the market to such a degree, which causes issues like what we had this past January and here and in Winter Storm Uri. Is that not correct?
You're talking about the past. I'm talking about the future. We've got to look to the future. We can't do anything about the past. But in the future, if we can create dependable, reliable, dispatchable energy from whatever source it might be, that's what we need to be doing. We need to put aside our special interest in what source we may prefer. And I'm of the opinion, all of the above. When we want energy, when we need energy here in Texas, we can't discriminate against any source. But
should we be investing tax dollars into a product that at best performs at 45% of nameplate capacity like wind and solar does, at best 45%, when thermal generation provides at 98% of nameplate capacity at peak? Why would we invest taxpayer dollars or something that doesn't even work halfway?
Jared, I don't think you understand. What I'm saying here is we're not doing that. All we're going to do is if wind and solar and other renewables can become fully dispatchable and can certify that, then they would qualify. It's an incentive to those renewable sources to become reliable sources of energy. This is the future. You know, if you're against this, you're on the wrong side of history.
But the PCM is a very complicated structure that we're having to put into place to make up for the wind and solar deficiencies in the grid. And isn't that the incentive that we're really debating, not just handing out tax dollars to renewables, but the PCM is the actual incentive that is built in for thermal or any kind of dispatchable generation that can perform when needed. What this would allow, this amendment, the way that I read it, sir, it says that property used for intermittent power generation to supply power to the grid, we're talking about wind and solar here, correct?
No. Well, this is just the definition that you're talking of a project, of a property. Under the bill, it still has to be dispatchable, and that's the magic word. It has to be dispatchable. We're not there yet. There's not a project that I know of right now that would qualify under this criteria. But 4 years from now, 5 years from now, there will be in all probability. And so we need to prepare for the future. You've got to understand, this is all about the future. It's about your children, your grandchildren being able to have enough power to turn the lights on in their home. We don't know where that power is going to come from, but this won't create it, but it will certainly help. And it will drive down the cost of electricity for the consumers here in Texas. So let's put aside all the special interests that are involved here, and let's for once do what's in the best interest of the people, the citizens of Texas.
Thank you for entertaining my question, sir. I just have one more question.
Okay.
With this amendment, is it your understanding that wind and solar would fall into HB5 and be allowed to receive taxpayer dollars with your amendment?
Only to the extent that they can certify that they're providing dispatchable power.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.